Well, at least I've got some sort of a picture. Good morning, Mirador Television. With a broken wing, I'm afraid. We're having some problems with getting the camera onto a certain piece of equipment. And asking me to do that is like asking me to fix a flat tire on a hard-rimmed bicycle. But anyway, we seem to have made it so far, just to get on board. It is 11 minutes past 8, 11 minutes past our normal time. And let us say straight away, we're not going to review the papers this morning because they're all much of a muchness. One is the release of the lady from Iran from the prison after 6 years, but the other is the continuing saga of the war, and the fact that it would appear, and it looks likely that it's confirmed, that Russian guns have flattened a building which held, I think it was a cinema or a theatre, that held 1,200 people sheltering from the war. It looks as if it's killed many of them. Have to be very careful, because with things like this, it's like any bombings that we've suffered here, terrorist bombings, is you never quite know whether there's one person or 1,500 that have been killed, depending on who was in it at the time. But it's an atrocity and a war of words. And my God, I wish we would stop wars of words, because just about everything is to do with yelling at one another, while the military continue to fire and people on a daily basis suffer, threatened with, and it occurs death and destruction. But don't worry, all the politicians and our leaders are jawing, and that's bound to stop it. Well, yesterday, the jaws, it looks as if there's a peace deal on the horizon. Boom! Up to 1,200 people possibly gone. The war, differing tales about how far the Russians are doing, how well they're doing. But the fact of the matter is that they are still in Ukraine, and they're still bombing, and they're still fighting. Our own, we got domestic problems, but some of those domestic problems are because of the war. We are running short of energy fuels, so prices are going to skyrocket, and the average family is going to be hit in the pocket. So dear old Boris, who loves controversy, actually, I'm quite sure that he courts it. In fact, we all know he does, has trotted off to Saudi to see if he can make a deal. We can't talk to them. They're naughty people. They lop off people's heads, and they don't have human rights and all the rest of it. Well, the fact of the matter is, if he doesn't talk to them, who does he talk to? Because it's the same people that will condemn him out of hand for doing that, who will also wake up one morning and say, I can't afford my gas bill, it's all Boris's fault. I mean, I'm not taking sides, political sides, and anything to do with the current crises. They are crises, and we have to face them, and we sometimes have to do unpalatable things. But it's amazing how quick we are to condemn what we demand one day and turns out to be unpalatable the next. You've got to do something about the energy crisis, Prime Minister, so he does something. Oh, you can't do that. What are you doing next? Well, it's not up to us. He's a leader. He's got to. It's so typical human nature. And how have we got to this human nature when, much as we may have railed against the differences in class 150 years ago, 100 years ago, even 100 years ago, is the very wealthy did have a sense of duty to their country. Well, the very wealthy do not have a sense of duty now. It is pig snouts in the trough. And that's really the tragedy. I don't care being poor and somebody else being rich if they got there by their own endeavors. And that's a reasonable proposition. What I do care about is that those people who have their snouts in the trough are the first to yell when they don't like something that has helped them get their snouts in the trough. And that's basically the thing that sticks in my craw. As a nation, we have no sense of duty. It's all me, 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 me. Well, we've been talking about the me society for some. Did anybody do anything about it? Not in the least. Pull down a statue or two, be awoke, change the dictionary. And those are some of the little things that have happened. But frankly, our mental health situation is we hear bleating on a daily basis from the very wealthy about how outrageous it is that nothing is done. But do they do anything? No. And has anything happened? No. Well, they're the drivers. People with money in their pockets drive an open market economy. So if there isn't change, it's them, the very people who are mouth, complain, yell. Now, I'm all for yelling. Wouldn't you know it? I'm all for yelling. I'm all for asking or demanding or stamping our little feet to get change. But it doesn't happen. I talked to one health professional who said, in many ways, we're still a bit like the Victorians. We treat our mental health by trying to jab them full of drugs, and that's it. And since I've had a little bit to do with it, I would concur with that. The homeless. If Dickens was here today, he'd just take a look around and he'd write exactly the same books. Okay, the workhouse is gone. The reason that you get thrown into prison is gone. In many instances, anyway, not totally. But our society basically has not changed. Why? Because the people with the money in their pockets, the drivers of an open market economy, can't be bothered. It's much easier for them to yap. And that's what's happening in this war. There's a lot of yapping going on, but sweet bugger all being done to either end it or at least mutate some of the excesses that now the White House and the Kremlin are falling out because Joe Biden has called Putin a war criminal. Well, I think I would go along with that. I think he probably is, some of the things he's done. So here you are, Mr. Putin. You're a war criminal, right? Now, I'm too small for you to worry about the fact that I just said that, right? But I said it. Oh, hang on. The change in what you're doing, I can't see it moving. And yet I've just expressed to you a desire for me, a citizen of the United Kingdom, that you should change. What about a few 100,000 of us all saying the same thing? Oh, well, makes headlines. Yeah, but no change. No change. Well, what about our leaders? Yes. No change. No change. And what have we got? Yes, it is war, but civilian bodies lying in the streets in much greater numbers. Well, I don't know whether they reach much greater numbers, but certainly at a pace which would have appalled us in the Second World War. It looks as if figures are starting to tally to the greatest loss of life ever in the First World War. And why? It's the old adage, isn't it? And I can't get the exact quote. But evil will flourish while good men do nothing. And how patronizing of us to those people who are under bombardment, who are having their homes destroyed, who are having their losses family, for us to say, well, we're the good guys. Well, we're not. Nobody is a good guy in war unless they do something to stop it. And we're not doing anything to stop it. Oh, sanctions. Oh, look how many oligarchs have had their fingers. If you ever had anything to do with it, the very rich, is knock three noughts off their wealth, and they've still got enough to live a life of luxury and not really give a fig. Who are we kidding? We create a system and then we criticize it when a crisis occurs and it can't handle it. And we really can't handle it. We have no pattern of handling it. We have no plan in place. Just because the wealthy wanted to stay wealthy, thank you. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't want anybody to think that I'm undermining making money, no matter how much. I do think some of it is obscene. Like a young footballer who never actually gets to kick a football for his club, and he's still got a few thousand a week being paid into his bank account. That is silly and obscene. And people prancing around on celluloid screens, getting obscene amounts of money. So who's to blame the oligarchs? who do it in a way that is not in the public eye until such time as we get a war. In other words, what I'm saying is we are very, very hypocritical. We are. But somebody like me, I mean, there's a report yesterday that our blokes around and blokesses around the country mouthing off the way that I am. And basically, they find the same thing as I do, is you're almost sent to commentary by the people that are next door to you and you've known all your life. Is, if you're going to say that, Keith, I don't want anything to do with you. Wash, wash, wash. Oh, because I disagree with you. Hey, that's a great democracy, isn't it? Our system is broken. And I will remind you, and it sounds from what I'm saying this morning as if I favour Boris, and I'm not favouring Boris at all, and I think he's been a complete idiot about some things. But the fact of the matter is that he does actually make suggestions, unpopular though they may be. And because they're unpopular, he gets slammed. But before the last election, and I can't see anywhere in the popular press or the mass press or whatever you want to call it, anywhere reminding anybody that he made a keynote speech about the fact that our governance is not fit for purpose. And it's not, and it's being shown up almost on a daily basis. And what happens? Nothing. Because there are too many people that are comfortable. So if in fact this war starts to make life uncomfortable, and for people who have no idea, because they've never had to face real crisis, how to deal with it, then it is doing some good. And that's the only good I can see coming out of it. We keep on, oh God, we're going to take in 5, 10, 15,000 refugees from Ukraine. Excellent. But what did that mean? It meant tapping into a computer. We do food banks. What does it mean? I gave up my Saturday afternoon to stand outside Waitrose or one of the other major supermarkets. I am very reminded, and I've mentioned this before, very reminded of that my Canadian friend who flew in the war, in the last war, World War II. And he said to somebody at a cocktail party, people were reminiscing about the war years, and those war years were grim in many parts of the world. A lot of life, conflict, and so on and so forth. And at a cocktail party, you heard somebody say, "Oh, it was dreadful during the war. I couldn't get sugar. The shortage of rationing, and he couldn't contain himself." And he went over and he said, "You know what you should have done is got some flack up your ass." And I think that a lot of people who are mouthing off today is get some flack up your ass, get cracking. Start to do something, because what you see as a notion is actually happening in practice. Now, I must say that I have not been part of this war. They probably wouldn't let me anywhere near it anyway, because we've got this strange thing about age in our society. And that's another one, ageism. Bloody hell, that pisses me off more than anything. But the fact of the matter is, I have worked in Lugansk. I've worked in Kiev. I've worked in Moscow. I've worked in those places that are the center of the fighting at the moment, so at least I've got some idea of what the hell's going on there. How many people, yap, 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 have even done that little bit? And it is only a little bit. But I could have told you now some of the background to the attitude towards Vladimir Putin before he actually started to bomb innocents. And it was inevitable that one day, if he said, "Boo, come with me," then they would have come with him. But do we worry about that? Do we debate it? No. What the hell? If all else fails, we can go back to the icing on the bloody cake in Westminster, can't we? I despair with my fellow man, and they despair with me. We stand at opposite ends of the stick. Some people will say I'm a warmonger. Some people will say, yeah, you want to draw us into a conflict and we'll all suffer. Well, somebody's going to suffer in a conflict like this. We didn't start it, but if we decide not to end it, the ramifications could be enormous. If you're a Russian teacher, put out your ticket now. You might well have a lot of work in the next year or two. Okay, that's being extreme, but actually, isn't it strange? What's happening at the moment in this war is it's all extreme. Extreme lives, and if we don't recognize it, we've had it. Right, the weather out there, clear skies at the moment. It's going to be half decent day. I think a little bit of rain here and there, but it's not going to be cold. A little breeze. Watch your hat when you go down the high street. If you've got one like this, the wind tends to go like that. But this old hat, this old trilby, has kicked around in more than 60 countries in the world. And like the Queen, I'm not really like the Queen, I'm not liking myself to the Queen, but she is a fabulous leader because she has huge knowledge, because she's been exposed to so many things. Well, I've got a reasonable amount of understanding of what goes on in the rest of the world, because I've been exposed to 60 countries. Some of my colleagues have been 80 or 100. The number doesn't count. We made it our business to try to get involved, to understand what's going on beyond our shores. And we are driven by millions of Americans who have never been out of their own town. Millions of Brits who think that the world starts and ends in Marbella, or the heel of Italy, or wherever. Yeah, see you on the high street this morning and you can slip my throat. That's better than breaking my nose, which some of you have tried to do recently. Okay, that's it. That's my rant for this morning. I am not only discombobulated, but also I'm rather upset about everything. Okay. Talk to you tomorrow, and hopefully we will get this system working properly, so we're back to where we were. Thanks for being with me. Keith Hayes.